Council as a whole budget session Wednesday, May 29th. This evening we have the Public Works Department coming before us. First group on the agenda today is Planning and Engineering on page 33. Planning and Engineering. Total budget $395,175. Last year, $376,258. Requested $413,677. And I know I haven't mentioned this in the past on too many of the other budgets, but since it is a big part of their budget, this is a less CDBG home EDI Section 108 and ENT entitlement. Is that what's ENT?
Enterprise Fund.
Enterprise Fund. These budgets have $343,373 also being funded to them by other sources. Who's here to talk about admin, engineering, and planning? Yep. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Fine, thanks.
Comments before we get started?
Yeah, I'd just like to bring you up to date on some of the highlights over the past year. It's been a really busy year for DPW. As in addition to our normal workload of maintaining the city's infrastructure, we have many projects that have been completed or are in progress. Everyone in the department deserves to be recognized for their accomplishments, so I'll provide a few highlights. We completed purchase of the streetlight system from Unitil. We've turned half of the streetlights on that had been turned off back in 2009, and we hired a private company to do the maintenance. We just had one of the 5 snowiest winters on record in Central Mass. Our crews did a great job in keeping our streets open, and our snow and ice account required $975,000 this year, but we expect to get back $143,000 from FEMA for the February blizzard, and if the state contributes their share, we could see anywhere up to $48,000 from MEMA. DPW designed quite a few projects in-house, saving the expense and time of hiring outside consultants. This included the Upper Common traffic signals, the Crockerfield track resurfacing project, the Sawyer Passway sewer project, the Almont Terrace water main replacement, and the Jeffrey Street extraneous flow project. I don't want to steal Joe Jordan's thunder, so he'll tell you more about those projects later. And DPW self-performed a number of projects, again saving the time and expense of hiring outside contractors, such as rebuilding 2 retaining walls that had collapsed at Laurel Hill Cemetery, completing the first 2 phases of the new water system up at Forest Hill Cemetery, installing the utilities for the Crocker Playground splash pad, and constructing the Sawyer Passway sewer project. We were successful in getting the state to downgrade the classification of several dams, which were in a higher class than necessary, and this will reduce the cost and frequency of costly dam inspections in the future. We've also been successful at obtaining and managing grants, as we received over $1 million to pave 85% of Ringe Road, and we're still working on the remaining 15%. We're receiving $500,000 for the demolition of the central steam plant, and we're in the process of implementing the grants that we received to mitigate flooding in the Columbia Ave and Shea Street neighborhoods. And again, we're managing the CDBG block grant program and the Chapter 90 paving program. I just want to make you aware that our next big challenge will be stormwater, as EPA will be issuing new draft MS4 stormwater permits this summer that will affect most Massachusetts cities and towns. And once the draft is issued, we'll be working closely with the mayor and the council to determine how to finance these new mandates, which, it really goes without saying, will come with no funding to pay for them. Concerning the FY14 budget, we're losing 1 position in the highway division due to a retirement that we're not allowed to replace. So to meet our budget target, we had to reduce expense items across the department to offset increases on the labor side that are occurring due to step increases. So now we can go ahead with the admin and engineering and planning portion, unless there are any other questions.
I just have a couple questions for you.
Councilor Reynolds?
Excuse
Councilor Reynolds?
me, Council.
Would you like me to yield to you?
Oh, no, no.
Oh, okay. You mentioned downgrading our dams. Could you just explain that a bit and how much money that'll save us and what the idea is behind that?
Yeah, every dam that's under the jurisdiction of the State Department of Dam Safety has a hazard classification rating, and they can be high hazard, significant hazard, or low hazard, and the whatever category you're in dictates how often you have to have the dams inspected, and if you need to file an emergency action plan. And we had a number of our dams that had been classified by consultants in the past as high hazard when it really wasn't necessary. So we had to go through an engineering exercise to prove to the state that the classification was worse than necessary. And once they agreed to downgrade the classification, we don't have to spend nearly as much time and expense on future inspections. And we were still committed to making sure the dams are safe, but it's mainly a matter of making sure our resources are directed towards the dams that really need attention and not to those that are in decent shape anyway.
Roughly how many dams do we have? Not specifically, but roughly.
About 17 or so.
And you have an internal continual inspection of those dams?
Yeah, depending on the classification, we have to inspect them as much as every 6 months or as infrequent as every 5 or 10 years. So we're trying to get away from having to go back every 6 months if we don't have to.
Thank you.
Councilor B.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner, on the retaining walls, when you mentioned retaining walls, it made me think of the one on Mechanic Street, which I go by every day and see it in disrepair still, and look kind of shabby with how we have it blockaded in that. I don't know if there's any way to give me an update on what's happening with that wall, and can we improve the appearance of it? If you drive by, the way they have the Jersey barriers up and the sawhorses that are halfway down and out, I mean, it's an entrance to the city. It just doesn't look very appealing.
Yeah, we've been waiting for the house to be removed from below that wall before we can stabilize the wall, and I think over the next month, if all goes well, that house will be moved so that we can get that project finished. Do you have any updates on that?
I know that the city and the Twin City CDC will be petitioning the council, presumably through its property committee, to allow the sale of that property to go through to the Twin City CDC. They've already begun the process of soliciting quotes to have the building moved to Johnson Street, the corner of Johnson Street, and they're preparing that site now. So we're hoping that will happen as quickly as possible, and that we can move that building.
Okay. And my second thing was on Chapter 90. I mean, we've seen some kind of finality, I think, there now with it's going to the governor for signature and that final bill. What does that mean for the city of Fitchburg? And a subsection of that thing, are we ever going to get a country roads program going again?
Yeah, I mean, the Capital Improvement Commission requested that we provide for a minimum distance of country roads every year. I think it might have been a half a mile or something like that, if I remember right, and so we're trying to do that.
But on the country roads, is there a different process you can use instead of using the typical asphalt that you use on the main roads? Haven't they in the past used other less expensive, still wear well kind of covering for country roads?
I mean, we've been looking into chip sealing instead of asphalt paving, and we're in the process of putting together a bid spec so that we can use chip sealing, but it's considered more of a method of sealing a road that's in decent shape as to
Fixing a road that's bad.
Fixing a road that's in real bad shape.
Yeah. Okay.
But we'd like to keep up the roads that are in decent shape so that they don't fall apart, and chip sealing will be one of the methods that we use.
Okay. And with Chapter 90 funds, I mean, the amount that the governor signed, is that what you were planning on all along, or is it additional money?
Yeah, the good news is that the governor and the legislature agreed that there would be a 50% increase in Chapter 90 for all the cities and towns. So we've been putting together our paving list based on that.
Is that a different list than we saw recently that the mayor had sent out?
Well, that's the list.
Okay.
And we have to divert some of our Chapter 90 funds to assisting with paving some of the CSS streets.
Right.
The combined sewer contract requires that the contractor mill and overlay all the streets that he works in, but it turns out that some of the streets are in such bad shape that they can't be milled anymore.
Okay.
So
But
we're going to have to...
do the infrastructure work before we do the paving on any streets. We're not going to pave and then do infrastructure work, right?
That's right. We do go to great lengths to try to make sure that that problem doesn't happen. Every once in a while, something happens, so we have to dig up a new street, but we try to avoid that. But anyway...
Good news on the Chapter 90 money, I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so in those combined sewer areas where the streets are in really bad shape, we'll have to go in and pulverize those and place one layer of pavement using Chapter 90 money, and then the contractor will go in and finish it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Bovet.
Thank you. Lenny, you had mentioned the steam plant. I know we had received some sort of a grant to either help or to do the whole job. When are you anticipating this beginning?
Yeah, Larry's been involved in that one very closely.
The mayor just signed a grant agreement yesterday with Mass Development that's providing us the funding so that we now have the commitment, and we just signed the contract amendment so that the environmental reports can be done on the site, which is part of the process, and to get the specifications prepared for the demolition of the building. So over the next several weeks, we'll be putting together specifications for the demolition of the building, and as soon as we have those ready, we will schedule through the purchasing department the actual bidding of that work.
And how much do you propose that this is going to cost the city of Fitchburg to remove this building?
Well, the best we can do at this point is talk to demolition contractors, go over the scope of work with them, which we've been trying to do, to get some kind of a ballpark estimate. But it's very difficult because of the unusual nature of and the quantity of asbestos abatement that has to be done inside the plant itself, and the access to certain parts. So we've had a couple look at them. The building itself, because of all of the metal in the building, all of the steel that's in the building, actually, if there was no asbestos, we might actually get paid by a contractor to have it taken away. So that is helping to offset some of the cost of doing the asbestos abatement, but it's too uncertain right now to come up with a real number. We are hoping that the balance of the $500,000 grant that we have, less the environmental costs, will leave us enough money that we can award a contract. If failing that, I know the mayor and the council have set aside tentatively an amount up to, I think it's about $100,000 or $110,000, that we're viewing as a contingency if the bids come in higher than that amount. But we're cautiously hopeful. I've heard a couple numbers that did come in substantially less than $500,000. I've also heard one that was close to $1 million, so I can't really say for certain. But they'll be spending the first 2 or 3 months, if we were able to get the project out to bid later this summer, they'll be spending the first 2 or 3 months doing the asbestos abatement work before they can begin taking the building down, and then cleaning up the site and hopefully stopping the source of oil that's been getting into the Nashua River, because we believe it's entering from a pipe from somewhere in the building.
Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have one cut recommendation on page 36 for $10,000 for gas and oil. My question first is, I'm looking at the FTE chart here. It says 20 and a half highway employees. I'm sorry, it's page 70 of the mayor's package. it says highway, staffing levels, highway FY14 proposed 20.5. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Are any of those 20.5 out on workman's comp? I mean, do we have a fully staffed 20.5? Or, I remember in the past years, there'd be a staffing level, but there'd be some workers who were out on injury or something for long periods of time.
Yeah, we have nobody out at this time.
So we have 20 and a half that are on the street.
21 and a half now, and then
21 and a half, okay.
well, with the retiree, it will be 20 and a half.
Okay. And how much is a new hire for that retirement replacement, roughly? How much would that be?
About 30,000.
That includes benefits?
No, that's just his base salary.
Base salary, okay. How much, my concern with the budget for your department is how heavily subsidized it is with grants through CDBG. We said a long time ago that there would be no planning department, and it looks like they're all in your department now. So it's, a creative way of getting rid of the title and then just moving everybody into one area. Because I see a lot of planning people in your department, and how much of the planning activities that are done under your supervision are DPW related?
Well, quite a few of those involving, parks and playgrounds, for example, and then certain neighborhood improvements, like recently we did all the work in Elm Street with paving and sidewalks, so those get involved with DPW. We have a number going on now with streetscape improvements, Water Street, Main Street.
My concern is, I'm asking this because my concern is, as we rely on these grants, because there's a lot of line items on here that are subsidized by them. My concern, again, like the last few meetings we've had in other departments, is if those grants are not there anymore, we're going to lose out big time. We obviously can't keep them on the city payroll without the grants, so my concern down the road is if we keep losing money from CDBG, because it has been going down every year, that pool will shrink because we don't have the funds to maintain all of the people that are on these grants. Someone like the dam engineer, other things that we would obviously need, but, without that grant money, we wouldn't have the ability to keep those people on. So I'm just concerned about that as a side note, but I will say that your department should be highly praised, especially yourself, sir, for how you manage it. I have never had a problem with reaching any of you or your staff, and the job gets done immediately, at least from my vantage point, when I request assistance for a resident, and the time that it's taken and the professionalism is second to none. And, the resident thanks me, but I always tell them they should thank these guys and yourself, because you have a lot of projects to do, you have a lot of stuff to do, but if there's a berm that broke, or, if you can't get it to it the next day, it gets done in a week or two, I mean, you guys are top-notch, and sometimes I feel that, not from this council standpoint, but outside of the council and stuff, that it might go unrecognized a lot of cases about how much work you have to do and how little resources you have, and yet you still never disappoint. So I hope you relate that to your staff, that their work is highly appreciated, and that's all I'll say. Thank
I'll
you.
be sure to pass that along. They appreciate it.
Thank you.
Couple of questions I have is, since the CDBG and the other programs have been broken up, have we lost out on any opportunities because there's not a central focused planning group, or especially in grant money? Is there opportunities that are being missed because of the way things are organized?
Well, I think that because of the fact that there have been cuts not just in the CDBG grant, but in the city portion of covering costs for planning and economic development, that clearly we don't have professionals in those fields currently acting on behalf of the city in terms of promoting the city for economic development and looking at long-term planning. We have more of a pragmatic approach to things now. We administer grants. We try as much as possible to anticipate opportunities for funding for things that we know are part of the city's long-term goals, for parks, playgrounds, and whatever grant programs are out there. So we do the best that we can with the staff that we have. Our focus is more on the pragmatic things now. And I guess that's the cost of seeing budget reductions across the board.
And I guess my other question is, as far as reporting, CDBG reporting and funding, has there been any difficulty in managing that with the group split up the way it is, or is it still being administered properly and there's no problems with the federal government?
I think what we're doing well because of the fact that we were able to keep all the central core staff and all of the filing systems and the coordination within the same space, so that even though some individuals are working in different departments, they have close proximity to the other people upon whose expertise they rely on to do their jobs.
Okay. Any other questions on page 33? Page 34, animal control. Mayor's budget, $51,350. FY14 budget, $71,250. Requested, $51,350. Councilor Di Natale.
Commissioner, what is the status of the kennel itself in terms of its structural integrity? I mean, are there any capital needs that kennel has above and beyond what we're paying for miscellaneous repairs or what have you?
Yeah, I should explain that. Back in February, we had a visit from the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. They're the ones who regulate animal control throughout the state. And they sent us about a 5-page letter with all kinds of concerns and recommendations on how animal control and the animal shelter work together, who should be responsible.
Thank you, Larry.
For what. And they also requested that we have a joint inspection of the kennel facility itself by the fire department, the health department, and the building department to make sure that it's something that will be viable for the foreseeable future.
Can we get that copy of that report? Are we able to get that report?
The one from the state?
Yeah, I'd like to see the report. You said that they identified some concerns.
Right.
Are the concerns shared by you? And are they big concerns, monetary-wise?
Not monetary-wise, but they were concerned, for one thing, about the organization, because when we took over the shelter, we could see that there was a lot of overtime required by the animal control officer up at the shelter, and we wanted to split animal control completely from the shelter to try to control overtime. But the state told us that we can't do that, because by law the animal control officer is responsible for all the dogs for the first 7 days that they're kept by the city. So we had to reorganize things so that the animal control officer maintains control for those first 7 days. They also want the city to think hard about how long we do keep dogs, because legally we're only required to keep them for those 7 days. And after that, we could euthanize them all on day 8 if we wanted to, but it's very expensive because it costs, humane concerns aside, it's expensive to euthanize a dog. And, another option was to look for an organization that would take all the dogs on day 8, and then we wouldn't have to deal with them anymore, but we haven't been able to find that either, So
the organization, so there are organizations out there who would take these dogs after day 7? Where I'm going with
We haven't been
this,
able to find anybody that would do that.
is there a reason why we haven't found anybody?
They just don't seem to be out there. I mean,
Okay.
even locally, and when we've tried to place dogs at, in nearby cities and towns, for example, when we had to keep all the dogs down at the DPW yard, some of the area towns just don't want to deal with some of the dogs that we have in Fitchburg, with the pit bulls and that sort of thing, so we have a hard time.
Where I'm going with this is, the costs have more than tripled in the last few years in total between your office and the police department for animal control services. Large part of that's because of the kennel, and obviously we didn't want to do what we were doing at the DPW yard, but if it's true, I'd like to see some data on it, but either regionalization or, because I feel like a lot of things that we take on might be animals from other cities or towns, and I haven't really been given any information that corroborates what I've been told, that it's less expensive for us to do what we're doing right now versus having a private agency handle where the dogs are housed and whatnot. If I can see some data, or we can see some data that corroborates that statement, that would help me in the future. But my last question on it is, well, two last questions. The first one is what I asked you earlier about infrastructure needs. Are there any infrastructure needs for that kennel above and beyond what you can maintain within your current budget? Big items, like over 10,000, let's say?
We did get a list of items that need to be addressed from that joint inspection that we had. There aren't any real major structural issues or anything like that. A lot of it's, securing doors, providing proper number of exits, and making sure the property is graded correctly so that whatever the dogs leave behind doesn't get washed down the street, that sort of thing.
Okay, and my last question is, do you have any staff on the DPW that spend their time over there?
Well, we have the half-time person who runs the shelter.
Do you have anybody from Highway or Parks or Cemetery utilizing any time over there?
Well, we have an assistant animal control officer who's a DPW employee who helps on the animal control side, which is so whenever the ACO is on vacation or out for whatever reason, he takes her place. He also alternates weekends with her. It's a concern to DPW because there are times when he should be, doing his DPW job, which is to paint crosswalks and fix signs and things like that when he's out chasing dogs.
Where is that individual in your budget? Because I didn't.
One of our heavy special motor equipment operators.
So we have a heavy special motor equipment operator that does part-time animal control services?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like he's allowed to ticket or enforce?
Yeah, when he's been trained and certified as an animal control officer.
Okay, good, but I just have a problem with the fact that you're lightly staffed, and we have a heavy motor equipment operator that has to spend part-time at the shelter. That's a big problem for me.
I'm not too happy with that myself.
I wouldn't think so. Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
President, Commissioner, regionalizing this service has been mentioned in this room several times by many of the councilors, including myself. The mayor also mentioned that she would look into regionalizing the animal shelter with surrounding communities. Have she discussed this with you and the animal control and moving forward with seeing if there's any interest with the surrounding communities in terms of regionalizing the shelter?
I think we've made some informal inquiries to the surrounding towns, but haven't found much interest in joining with Fitchburg, but I see that Leominster's having lots of difficulty in finding a solution to their animal control problem also, so maybe we should have more serious discussions with them to see if we can go in together. I think that they've been about a year now without a solution to their problem.
And I'm aware of that situation, and I think it's I don't know if there's a plan in place for you, the mayor, and our animal control to sit down with Leominster and also try again to garner some interest from the other communities to push this issue forward. I think with Fitchburg being the mecca of leading so many in providing leadership in so many programs, this is one thing that I don't think the city should be providing leadership to, because it's, as you can see, I've been saying all along that if we continue in this path, it's going to cost the city, and the expenses are just going to go up. And I firmly believe that having a shelter in Fitchburg right now, that we're incurring all the problems of the surrounding communities, and I think you would concur with that. So regionalizing this shelter would alleviate some of the burden that we have in terms of having sole control of the shelter. So I would like to see the Department of Public Works, Animal Control Officer, and the mayor pursue this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth looking into, especially since Leominster's having their difficulties right now in that same issue. But as far as, taking on all the problems in the region, we really only take Fitchburg dogs. The only exception is that our shelter manager has a program with outside shelters where she works trades. If we have dogs here that people don't seem to be interested in adopting, she'll swap 4 Fitchburg dogs for 1 dog from from outside of town. So right now we have 3 dogs from out of Fitchburg in the shelter, but we swapped out 12 Fitchburg dogs in exchange, so it saves money, even though we do end up with some dogs from out of town.
We do pick up stray dogs, stray cats. We don't know those Fitchburg animals, do we? When we pick them up, we pick them up.
Yeah, I'm not aware if there are any from out of town or not in that category. The only ones I know of that we have out of town right now are those that we've brought in through trades.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. And I should mention that we did cut the animal control expense budget considerably because they've done a very good job with their revolving fund. So this year alone, they brought in about $37,500 in revenues, on top of last year's, which was a partial year, $19,600.
Thank you. Councilor Hay? I was going to piggyback on Councilor Tran, but I'll get back to that. But my first question is your last statement. Revenues, where do those revenues come from? What's the revenue stream? Or is it fundraising?
It's not fundraising. I mean, out of all those revenues, only about $1,600 was through actual donations. The rest are boarding fees, adoption fees.
Okay. The second question is, who owns the shelter?
It's owned by Carol Stacy, and we lease it from her.
Okay. In the lease, is it clear who's responsible for capital improvements and upkeep of the property, so that if the state comes in and says A, B, and C needs to be done, is the city on the hook for those things?
Yeah, maintenance of the shelter is the city's responsibility.
Okay, so if the state comes in and says we need to do things and there's costs associated with it, we get it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Second is the mechanic, did you say heavy equipment mechanic? Is that his title?
The heavy special motor equipment operator. Yeah.
Heavy special motor equipment operator / animal control officer. He's paid, I presume, through negotiations as the special heavy motor operator at a certain rate.
Right.
For full-time in that position. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
If we were to pay somebody to be a assistant animal control officer, would that rate of pay be the same as that special
heavy motor equipment operator person?
It might be somewhat less, I would think.
Somewhat less. So in reality, we're overpaying somebody to do this part-time position.
Yes, and it also comes out of DPW budget.
Exactly. I just make my points here, Lenny, okay? I'm not scolding you, I'm just making a point. Getting back to Councilor Tran's statements about regionalization, I think it's a great idea, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think there's an incentive for the other cities and towns to jump into regionalization because we already provide the service that they need and they don't want to provide themselves. You also mentioned that we only take Fitchburg dogs. How do we know they're Fitchburg dogs?
Once they trace the owners.
But if they're strays and they can't trace the owners, somebody from Ashburnham, somebody from Leominster, somebody from another city or town drives into Cogswell Park, puts the dog out of the car and drives away, it's a resident?
Yeah, I assume if it's
Okay.
taken in Fitchburg, we take it.
Right, so we have non-Fitchburg dogs that are getting Fitchburg residency by that manner. And again, one more reason for them not to do regionalization. And the last question, which is a very difficult one for me to ask, because I am not a proponent of putting dogs down. I think we should do everything we can to find good, happy, healthy environments for those dogs to be in. But you talked about after 7 days, we can euthanize the dog, but that euthanizing the dog has a cost associated with it, and it is pretty expensive, and I'm well aware of it, having done it last week. But have you done a cost analysis to show what it costs us to keep that dog for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, as opposed to that?
We can do that.
Because my guess is that costs money too, as reflected in this budget. I'm not saying that we want to go down that road, but we need to at least sometime look at that and figure out where it is and how much it's costing us to run this program, particularly since it's a regional program that's being funded by the city of Fitchburg. Thank you. Councilor Bean.
Mr. President, I just want to say to the Commissioner that I've been up to the kennel a few times and been involved in some of the discussions you've had about the operations between the animal control officer and the kennel, kind of separating those duties and that. And I just want to say that you've done a good job doing that, and I think the kennels run very well. The fact that they're able to raise $37,000 on their own to help offset some of the expenses is a tribute to what they do. And I think, yeah, we're all concerned about the rising expense, but without this kennel, I think we'd be in a lot different situation, in a difficult situation. As a former mayor, I can tell you, I was without a police chief for a while. I was without there's certain department heads I was without. When Carol Stacy quit, that was probably the most difficult time because there really isn't a lot you can do, when people are calling you about those services. So it's a city like Fitchburg with the number of animals we have and that, it's critical we have a solution. And for the solution we have right now, I think we're doing a great job on it.
And we're fortunate to have so many volunteers through the ACE organization that put in a lot of time to keep the shelter going every day with only one part-time employee up there.
Okay, moving on to page 36. Public Works Highway, Mayor's budget, $1,632,458. Last year, $1,739,723. Requested, $1,702,458. Councilor Bean.
I just want to echo what Councilor Di Natale said about the people in the Highway Department. The times that I've called, whether it's been a blocked sewer or broken fence, things like that, they've always been repaired quickly and efficiently, and with the limited staff you have, I really appreciate the work that the folks do there, and I just want to pass that on also.
Okay, thanks.
The Special Motor Equipment's Operator 2, the full-time equivalent, is that going down? Is that where the retirement is?
Yeah, the retirement is actually a working foreman, but I still showed the working foreman in the budget and took it and reduced the number of special motor equipment operators by one, because either way, we're going to have to pay for somebody to supervise the crews. So we have our choice of promoting somebody to working foreman, or else we'll have to pay out of class every day for somebody to fill in.
And by reducing that by one person, the special motor equipment operator, does that mean that we potentially might have to go out and do more contracting to get that service, or is this still something that you should be able to absorb?
I mean, we'll absorb it the best we can, but it'll just make it more difficult to get everything done.
And
I
that's
thought we'd
the
do
big
more
vehicles,
contracting.
right?
We'll just do less work.
Okay. Councilor Hay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lenny, certification stipends, those certifications that the employees need in order to be able to perform tasks?
Yes, once you become a heavy special, you have to have a class, CDL, commercial driver's license, and, it costs.
And so, and I understand this is negotiated and part of the contract, I'm sure, but they are given a stipend for having a certification that they have to have in order to perform their job.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Biting my tongue. Councilor Trapp.
President, Commissioner, you mentioned earlier that you will be losing one personnel from your highway department.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that you're not allowed to replace that person. Can you elaborate on what you mean by using the word allowed, not allowed?
Basically, when the department heads were putting budgets together, the instructions from the mayor were not to replace retirees.
To the police department and the fire department?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions. We'll go on to page 37, the Parks Department. Mayor's budget, $228,234. Last year, $224,624. Requested was $246,234. Councilor Di Natale.
How many parks do we have in the city that we have to maintain? What's the number?
I think we have on the order of 35 parks or so.
35 parks. And we have 4 people to do 35 parks. I like to think that our city's park happy. Lately, we have all these parks that are constructed, and the question at these meetings is always, how do you maintain them in perpetuity? Is it the sole responsibility of your park staff to maintain those 35, or is there outside help to maintain those 35?
Right now, the only one that's getting outside help is Riverfront Park, where the successor to the original Riverfront Park Foundation takes care of some of the landscaping.
So 34 of them are solely in under your jurisdiction?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lenny, I'm looking at, it looks like under the parks, that there seems to come down to one line that is the difference between the mayor's proposed budget and your proposed budget, and that has to come down to tree removal, trimming, and planting, where there was a request made of $15,000, and the mayor chose not to fund any of that. I know we've cut down a lot of trees, done a lot of, we put some pretty good damage as far as taking care of a lot of trees. We can always use more. And apparently you think we could use more because you put down $15,000. We need more.
Yeah, it's something that I discussed with the Parks Board, and they want, and I agreed with the Parks Board that rather than pay for tree removal and tree trimming out of the highway budget, because usually there are safety issues along the streets that have to be taken care of, so we only cut down trees in the parks. If there's money left over from the streets, that'd be good to have a dedicated line item to do tree removal in the parks. But when we weren't able to fund that, we came up with the idea with the Parks Board to do a timber harvest in Park Hill Park. So we'll be able to realize something like $8,000 from the timber sale to thin out the woods and clean up the ice storm damage and that sort of thing. It'll make it more attractive and promote the long-term health of that forested area, and it'll provide revenues that we can use for cutting trees in the parks.
So would that money, 8,000 or so, would that be under the revenue part of the budget?
It will go into the revolving fund for parks and recreation.
Okay. I'm all set. Go ahead. Thank you.
Councilor Bean.
Do we still hire summer help for like the cemetery and parks to help maintain them during the summer months?
We do in the cemeteries.
Not in the parks?
On a limited basis, we have part-time help, weekends mainly to help out with the stone house at Cogswell Park, because that gets really heavy use and requires a lot of attention and cleanup.
And where does the money come from to fund those positions? Is that in this budget here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
This is on page 35. Are we on page 35?
No, we're still on page 37.
Sorry. I'll wait till 35.
Anything further on parks? Councilor Reynolds.
Lenny, there's been an increase in the cost of electricity. Have you noted, what is the cause of that increase? Is it a transportation cost charged by the utility company?
I'm not sure which.
I'm looking at electricity for the stone house is one line, but then you also have electricity up here. I'm on page 37, under park expenses. The fourth one down is electricity for the stone house.
Right.
And I was wondering...
Well, the stone house didn't used to have electric heat, but now it does. After the fire, when it was reconstructed, that was the type of heating system that was put in, but it's not generally heated all year round.
Okay, I just happened to notice that the utility is charging more for transportation costs. And so I was just wondering about the ratio between us, the city saving costs through the purchase of the electricity, and the utility company perhaps recovering that loss through charging higher transportation costs. Is that something you have your eye on, or?
Yeah, I'd have to look at that in more detail. I just look at the bottom line, how much we spend each year, and I haven't gotten into the
Yeah, if you look at
visual
that
line
one line,
items.
you might find it interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to page 35, Cemetery Department. Mayor's budget, $214,158. The FY14 budget, $205,494. Requested, $229,658. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Is the cemetery in the, I recall many years ago, you had the cemetery staff in the cemeteries, the park staff in the parks. Didn't we merge the two, kind of, where we had parks employees and cemetery employees doing one or the other. Is that still going on, or are they now back to cemetery staffs with cemetery, parks or with parks?
Yeah, they're separate most of the time, but, occasionally if someone is out or if, there's a lot of work going on at any particular time that the staff can't handle, then they'll help each other out.
I've noticed that since FY08, our sale of lots and graves has gone down. That seems to be the trend. I'm guessing that there's more of a market now for mausoleum, columbariums, cremations instead of graves. Is that one of the reasons why this number continues to drop? Or are we just...
That's a good part of the reason.
Are we, I know we have...
Fewer and fewer full burials each year, it seems.
And the full burial obviously is more costly than... Are there, I know there's a columbarium that we constructed in Forest Hill. Are there plans down the road for, is there a need to have another one as the cremation aspect of this gets more intense?
Yes, and we're setting aside money from the sale, half the money from the sale of each niche in the columbarium into the revolving fund to help fund a new columbarium. So we sold more than half of the spaces, so in the next year or two, we should be ready to start planning for another one.
And is there any space issues with, I mean, the most active cemetery, I take it, is Forest Hill, right?
Right.
Is there any space limitations at Forest Hill in terms of, are we going to reach a point where we're going to be at capacity? Because I only know of one section along Rowstone Street, right across from Park Hill Plaza, that's wide open, and then after that, I don't know where else. I mean, it's a long time. I mean, I'm just thinking future planning, because I used to work at the cemetery department, and there was a concern years ago back then about running out of space down the road, and where would we have to expand, because that's the only active cemetery we have right now.
I mean, eventually we will run out of space, it's just a matter of when. That's why we had a master plan done, which was just completed within the past year, and they projected out how much space there is in the cemetery and how long it would take to fill up the space, and they drew up a plan showing where additional graves could be located. I mean, they included eliminating some of the roads within the cemetery and making them into graves.
And lastly, how many cemeteries do we maintain?
5 or 6.
Thank you.
Including some of the small ones in outlying areas.
Right, yep. Okay, thank you.
See, Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lenny, I know in the last few years, the Cemetery Commission has gone up on some fees. There's no plan on any fees going up this year, is there?
No, not right now.
Okay. And the mausoleum roof, I see you put in for $10,000 and then get funded. What kind of, are we still facing the problems that we've been facing for years with that roof?
Well, we're much better off than we were a few years ago. I don't know if Craig Ledger's still here. He is. He found that one of the roof drains was discharging directly into the wall cavity in the mausoleum, so it's just a matter of extending the roof drain out beyond the wall line to stop that from happening. So it took an hour to get that fixed, so that eliminated about 98% of the problem in the mausoleum, so now it's not icing over on the floor in the winter like it did for a while. So Craig deserves a lot of credit for that. But the roof still is old and needs to be replaced. We have money in the equipment bond from a couple years ago to pay for a new roof, but it doesn't look like it will be enough. So that's why we had put money in the budget for that. But just like with the trees in the parks, we're going to do a timber harvest on that plot of land on the corner of Electric Ave and Rollstone Road, which will realize some revenues that we can used to supplement the roof budget.
Right.
So we have to be a little creative to get these things done.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you, Mr. Ledger.
King of outside the box. It's just everything that you do, you just do it, and that's so appreciated by, I think if people have heard it already, it's not, we can't do something, somehow it always seems to get done. Okay, moving on to snow and ice on page 38. Mayor's budget, $400,000. The current fiscal year's budget, $550,000. Requested was $400,000. Councilor Hay.
Just asking, Lenny, something was mentioned at a meeting last week. Is there some amount that is required to be funded in this line item for snow and ice removal?
Dick might be more familiar than I am. I think there are requirements on you can't reduce from one year to the next.
You can deficit spend in the following year, as long as you budget the original budget of the prior year. So that's why we always leave it at 400,000.
Okay.
That's traditionally been the amount for years. And so you are allowed to deficit spend anything over 400,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Moving on, Water Enterprise Division, page 63 through 67.
Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you very much, Lenny. Water Enterprise, page 63, Mayor's budget, $5,584,000. Current fiscal year projected $5,350,827, and requested $5,584,000. And also in this account, we have a total surplus of $5,847 in this current year. Mr. Munier.
Good evening, Mr. President, councilors. Just to kind of recap the current year, kind of some highlights. Probably the three major capital projects were replacing the water mains under the Kimball Street and the River Street bridges in conjunction with replacing those bridges, which was a Mass DOT project, but we could be able to jump on that and replace the major water mains that went under those bridges. In the case of the Kimball Street, giving us some redundancy from one high system and low system to the other. Replaced a water main that we lost, I think some of you remember, during the budget hearings a few years ago and by the 50/50 diner, that under the river. And so we were able to, instead of replacing that water main that went underneath the river, reroute it under the Kimball Street Bridge to provide us with redundant water supply throughout the city. Again, the same way with the River Street Bridge, we were able to replace that water main, and then by doing that, and also a section on Wallace Road, eliminate a section of water main that went under the railroad tracks in that area, which we were always very concerned about, because in case we had a leak in that in the railroad area, that would obviously be very destructive to the railroad and very difficult to replace. So in addition to those two projects, we replaced the 220 linear feet of 4-inch water main on Almont Terrace and 300 linear feet of services on that same road, and paved that street with the water main project. Moving forward to this year's budget, there are not a lot of significant changes to past year or to last year. Probably the biggest one is, as discussed earlier when I came before you to request a loan. We did take a $1.75 million loan to fund the construction of almost 9,000 linear feet of water main over the next 2 summers, in conjunction with the combined sewer separation projects in the Summer Street area, Lower Summer Street, and also some of the side streets off of Summer Street. So we will be replacing 9,000 linear feet of 8-inch water main, which will give us much better fire protection and domestic service in those areas. And one other item that was added to the budget, the city added $50,000 to fund fringe benefits. That hasn't been added, that hadn't moved in a number of years, but we see an increase of $50,000 paid back to the city. Currently have 20 employees that are punching the clock every morning. We had 2 very recent retirements in the water department, so I have funded those 2 positions, which we've had up until now. We have not posted them yet, but I hope to feel very strongly that we need to replace those 2 positions. About 4 years ago, we added those 2 positions, which allowed us to do most of our own repairs, all service repairs, some water main replacement, do our own snow plowing this year, which we previously had contracted out, and do also our own hydrant flushing, which again had been contracted out in the past. So I think those 2 positions are vital to the good maintenance and operation of the water department, so I hope to be able to fill those after July 1st. And glad to answer any of your questions.
Councillor Hay.
Thank you. Yeah, Dennis, in response to your last thing there, I appreciate the work that's being done and the things you're doing in-house now, and I think that's cost-effective and benefits the city. But were you under the same mandate as the police department, the fire department, and Commissioner Laxo here to not replace retirement positions through retirement?
The direction I got was that we would not be replacing any retirees until after we had a budget, and then we would take a look at it.
Do you believe that the mayor indicated that she'd take a look at it after the budget was approved because you're an enterprise fund as opposed to those other departments where she's telling them that they can't replace retirees?
She didn't elaborate on her.
She's not here. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Di Natale.
Thank you. General question, Ms. Saracen. If there were cuts made in this budget, where would they go? I know it has to stay within enterprise, but I know the budget, I guess, has to be balanced.
Well, if there's a cut in a line item, then it would that cut would remain. If that resulted in a surplus at year end because we didn't spend as much, then that would just add to the retained earnings.
That's what I was thinking. Because I feel like typically the enterprise funds get lighter treatment because they're self-sustaining. It's like a business. But so there are the 2 positions that won't be filled, are they funded in this budget?
They are.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
What line items are those?
Both positions would come under labor. There's a large that on page 65 under labor.
Okay. What's the engineering inspector, 44,631? I know we used to have it, but I don't see it in the FY14 budget.
Which line item are you looking at?
It would be 7th one down. I see that it says projected 44,460, but maybe I have this incorrectly, but I read the status C to say that we have nothing against that account this year.
That's a filled position. That's what we've had right along.
Okay, maybe I just made a typo. You said that the 2 positions that are retiring that aren't going to be filled, we added 2 positions 4 years ago in that line item?
Yes.
Obviously, I have an issue with what we've added in the last 3 or 4 years. I know the wastewater's added a ton for a number of reasons, and my problem is that I understand we're self-sustaining, but there are a lot of other departments that are feeling the pinch. I'm not saying that water is immune to any pinches, but I would make the argument that, well, before I say this, the fringe benefits that they contribute, that covers the pension and the health care?
It's very close. We recently calculated the cost for the retirees, that for their health insurance and life insurance, and I think we're finding that we're not getting quite everything back. However, on the flip side, as the department heads have to fend for their departments, we don't get charged for the water we use or the wastewater we use. So it's an internal debate, or it's an internal issue. But we are very close to the gross amount.
Yeah, my concern is, as Councilor Hay pointed out, is that there are other departments we've already had where they've had retirements that they can't fill purely because they aren't in an enterprise account. I find that to be unfair, but I just feel like if those public safety positions can't be filled because we can't sustain them, maybe we should not have these two positions filled, in my opinion, until we get clearer direction from the mayor on which way she wants to go with it. I mean, they haven't been posted. How long have these positions have been unfilled?
They're recent retirements. One was in April, one was in February.
I would like to remove those two from the budget until we get some movement on other departments, in the matter of fairness. That's just how I feel about it. But I keep hearing about this, we're bringing work in-house, and it's cheaper than contracting it. I'm not following that, because contractors don't have benefits, yet internal employees do. So I'm not understanding. Let's say a contractor costs $100,000 and have the employee do it, it's $60,000, not including the benefits. I mean,
Using that same math, Counselor, my calculation is that by hiring 2 employees, we're spending, including benefits, about $101,000 a year. And they're doing about $200,000 worth of work that would be done by contractors that are mandated, relatively mandated work. We need to plow the snow in these facilities. We need to fix the leaks. We need to do watershed maintenance. We need to do dam maintenance. 4 years ago, we were getting a service fix by contractors for $800 or $900 per service leak. That cost is now $1,800 to $2,000 for every service leak. And by following procurement regulations and purchasing guidelines, that cost has gone to about, it said $1,800 to $2,000 per leak. With 2 guys, I can do 2 of those leaks in one day. So that's, $4,000 a day that we saved or would have spent for a contractor that's being done for a lot less money. I'm offsetting about $100,000, from the way I looked at these budgets, about $100,000 in cost every year.
I don't know how the rest of the council feels. Maybe, I'll let everybody else when I'm finished. President Will, something's not right here that we have retirements and when we're filling them, or it's in the budget as being filled, yet that's not really what the story is that you're getting. It's a wait-and-see approach, but they're in the budget. I understand that if we don't fill them, they just flow to the bottom line, but do we know what that would be? How much those 2 positions would be in that labor line item?
We could.
I'm just curious.
It's about $75,000.
I'd like to make a recommendation that we cut $75,000 from labor. Thank you.
What's that? Councilor Bean.
Being an enterprise fund, I understand how it works, that money comes in from the people that use water to cover these expenses. So you have X amount of dollars coming in because of the rate increases and that now you have to use. And I'm kind of like, feeling like Councilor Dintali, just because we have all that money coming in doesn't mean we need to spend it all. We could make cuts and make recommendations and have that money go towards future rate stabilization or rate reduction. I mean, if we keep spending at this level, I mean, I'm sure you're going to be seeing rate increases coming up. I don't think our rates are going to stay stabilized forever. So there is one way to kind of look towards lowering future rates, since you just have a large rate, would be to take a hard line at some of these enterprise accounts and look at them and make cuts, reasonable cuts if we have to, that aren't fall. I mean, actually, by making those cuts, we can help offset future increases, not have the problem we had in the past where we saw that recently. What was the increase recently?
On the water rate?
Yeah.
It was 20 cents 2 years ago.
Right. But am I correct, Ms. Saracen, if we made cuts and those dollars would have been used to hopefully offset expenses next year and lower the cost? So it could be used to stabilize rates.
Yeah, but also, let me just add, they do kind of stand alone where they have to operate and get their job done. They don't, and within their budget, so you'd hate to cut positions to hurt the department's productivity or the revenue that they may make, or like Dennis said, where they may spend double what they would spend, but you're correct.
Right. I mean, my sense is, I don't want to think that the enterprise fund, we don't have to worry about it. They get the money coming in, they can cover it. You know, that's really not the right way to look at it, because you have the ratepayer out there, whether it's in the wastewater or water department, those ratepayers that pay those rates actually pay the operation. And that was my point. I just don't want people to think that just because the enterprise fund, we don't have to touch it. It's,
comment?
self-sufficient operating.
Mr. President, may I comment? I think, Counselor, if you look back at the budget handbook you have in front of you, going back to 2008, you see that the total water enterprise fund has moved very little in a number of years. We've done everything we could to stabilize this budget and still get the water done, to still maintain the water department, providing safe drinking water for the citizens of Fitchburg, 40,000 people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, fire protection 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. The fact of the matter is, we saw what happened in the wastewater when we allowed the system to deteriorate, and now we're looking at major increases, fines from the EPA, huge capital cost. I really strongly feel that would be the wrong way to go, and we're just not taking money and spend it. In fact, we should be spending more money on capital improvements. We should be I've been trying to hold this rate for a couple of years now, and you're right, we probably should be looking at rate increases, and I will be coming before you with a master plan showing probably some small rate increases to continue capital improvement. We were able to borrow $1.75 million this year for a $2 million project. That amount of capital improvement should be being done every single year to replace 100-year-old water mains, 180 miles of them, that if we don't continuously start replacing those water mains, we will be in the same boat as wastewater got into, where we're looking at major increases and a infrastructure that's deteriorating and falling apart.
My point was, Mr. President, my point was, I think you do a good job and all that. My point was, just because it's an enterprise fund doesn't mean we can't take a look at it. We shouldn't take a look at it. I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to take a look at the expenses. I know you run a tight ship in operation, but I'm just saying that if we did make cuts, those could be used to help offset or use in the future. I'm not saying, we're not recommending cuts at this time. I'm just saying, just because it's an enterprise fund doesn't mean we hands off. I think enterprise funds are all part of the budget process.
I agree
and should be
with you
handled the same
100%.
way.
Yep,
So,
I agree with that point. But
okay. And you do a great job, by the way.
This is a very lean and mean budget.
Councilor Hay.
Thank you. Dennis, back to your response to Councilor Di Natale when you talked about the two positions costing $100,000 between what we pay in the benefits, and they're doing $200,000 of work. Do you calculate in what we'll pay in retirement and in OPEB? And do you use a certain number of years of expectations of how long we'll be doing that after somebody retires?
I have not, considering that's kind of a new calculation in the last few months.
Okay.
And it's still being worked out. I have not calculated that that part into it.
Right. And I'm not saying it
Yeah.
would tip this the other way, but
Yeah.
I think it's certainly 100 to 200 doesn't go once you start calculating all that money that we pay out on the end, with people living longer and our expenses going up and healthcare never staying the same. So I think we need to factor that in when we're trying to figure out if these things are cost-effective. Thank you.
Councilor T-Bone, yes.
I guess you kind of answered it, but if you'd like to elaborate more on it, I'm asking specifically how the $75,000 cut would affect the productivity of the plant.
Counselor, as I said, there are certain jobs that have to get done to maintain the department, the infrastructure, and to provide safe drinking water to the citizens. My feeling is that the cut of $75,000 from strictly the labor item would result in probably $200,000 in contractor costs over the same amount of time.
Thank you.
Councilor Reynolds.
I have about 3 things I'd like to mention. One is, on the revenue side, I see that there's been a decrease in investment income. Is that simply a paper figure at the moment? I mean, and when things go up, that'll also go up?
Dick can answer that probably a little bit better than I can.
The rates of investment returns are a lot lower.
I understand, but it hasn't been realized. It's a paper. It's just on paper.
It'll depend on how much money they have in their account throughout the year, and then it does get invested by the treasurer. So there is
investment income.
Right.
So this is what's come up, the monies that are realized from the investment,
correct.
but not spent, not actually realized as potential, right?
Right. This is
Were you to
potential
sell
income.
were you to sell it? So that can fluctuate.
That's like an interest.
Yeah, right,
interest
right.
income. Okay.
Right, so that will
On the
fluctuate.
balance in the account.
Right. So then on the overtime, it's quite high on overtime. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Again, it kind of goes back to what the discussion we were just having about doing this work in-house. And again, the calculation that spending a little bit more for overtime is efficient and productive, as opposed to having contractors do the work.
By the way, your electricity is actually going down.
Yes.
How'd you do it? Tell us.
Well, one of the items was, again, give credit to the operators at the plants and the chief operator at the chief treatment operator. We have a pump at Mare Meadow, and practice was to kind of run that pump and pump water from Mare Meadow Reservoir into Meeting House Reservoir, which is the terminal reservoir at our regional plant. That pump uses quite a bit of electricity. We've basically figured a way to minimize the use of that pump, still maintain the water levels at Meeting House. And then we did a $1.1 million upgrade to the regional water treatment plant, which rebuilt the clarifiers there, changed the filter media. That filter media was quite inefficient and required a lot of backwashing, which used a lot of electricity to not only circulate the water, but pump air through the media. And we were able to cut down significantly on that. So that's the two biggest things.
And this maturing debt, at what point will that show some relief?
Again, it goes up a little bit this year because of the new loan. If nothing else changes, that total debt service will go to 1.9 million this year, as we see. Next year it'll be 1.8. Following year 1.8. It really starts to dropping significantly in 2022. There's a big reduction in debt service mainly because the two loans that were taken by the city to build the water treatment facilities, they borrowed $36 million. Those loans will start to be paid down significantly. So in about 7 to 8 years, that debt service is going to drop significantly, if nothing else changes.
You have any, a rough idea of how much the drop would be? Is that significant?
We're going to stay at around 1.8 million, a little less, until 2020, 2021. It drops to 850,000. Stays at about 850,000 until 2025. It drops to 500,000. A year later, it drops to 100,000. Again, no other loans are taken.
I just had one other question. Is there any system in place to capture the rising water levels that during the spring season? I noticed the Nashua River, which occasionally is at a trickle at a certain spot that I viewed, is, or does it simply increase our reservoir supply and then we lose that reservoir supply through evaporation?
We do. Each reservoir has a certain spillway level when it reaches capacity of the reservoir, and when that starts to go over the spillway like it is right now, all the reservoirs are full. We do lose that.
Through evaporation. So
not evaporation, but even spilling over, for instance.
Right. So is there any system in place in the country, in the world, where waters aren't lost like this?
Not off the top of my head. Each reservoir is designed to hold a certain capacity. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there might be somewhere where you can raise spillway boards, so you raise the level of the reservoir. There probably is. We don't have that currently in place in Fitchburg.
And that's a good thought, but there's no auxiliary like freezing the water so that we have it, or
No.
any other system that you're aware of that's in the works? No? Okay.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. I go into this well aware of the fact that no department head is going to willingly cede any money from their budgets, because if we cut money from the budget, all hell will break loose. The cut of $75,000 is 1.3%. And I'm having a hard time understanding that the methodology behind the cut was, we haven't had these positions out yet, not even posted. One has been unfilled for months. The mayor tells the commissioner, per what the commissioner said, that we'll have to take a look at it if and when the budget passes. So my only point with the cut is, they're not posted, they haven't been posted in months, and the mayor's wishy-washy on what's going to happen. So why fund it until we know what the chief executive officer wishes to do? It's not like the money's leaving the water enterprise. If we have such a big need for capital items, throw the 75 grand into the capital items. And if we have to spend more on contract services, fine. We don't get hit with benefits. I mean, I hear what the commissioner is saying, and I'm not expecting him to tell me, go ahead, hey, by the way, take 150 out, not 75. I mean, every department head does this. It's just, I find it ridiculous that a $75,000 cut out of $5.4 million is going to cause chaos.
Point of order. I'd like to stick to the facts and not say that somebody's wishy-washy. There may be perfectly good reasons why the mayor does something. And
Can I finish?
No.
Why not?
We've heard it.
What have you heard?
Everything that you've said already.
Did the commissioner not say that the mayor said we'll get back to you when the budget's passed?
Right, we've heard that.
That's wishy-washy. Why is it in here if it's not going to get done? It's a simple question.
Point taken, Counselor.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why there has to be a point of order about that.
Counselor Bean.
Mr. President, through you to the Commissioner, on the capital expenditures, you do have a capital expenditure budget here. Could you just tell me what the $39,000 would be used for?
What we've been doing in the last few years is trying to replace one piece of equipment each year. And that's primarily what that money is for, to replace a truck or a backhoe or a piece of equipment.
Okay. So it'd be vehicle. I wasn't sure if it was vehicles or variable pumps, or so it's not variable speed pumps, things like that. It's more of a...
The $240,000 in there would be used for pumps or variable speed pumps or other capital improvements.
Okay, but the $39,000 is for equipment?
Equipment.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I just want one little comment. If I look at contracted services, and if I'm looking at apples to apples, which is what we supposedly added people for, in 2008, it was $210,000. In 2009, when we didn't have the extra people, it was $91,000. When we didn't have the extra people, it went up to $143, and the following year it went up to $174, and then supposedly when we hired the people 2 years ago, it went down to $104. So 104 to 74 is only $70,000. It's not $200,000. So the whole argument about that the contract services has gone down $200,000 doesn't seem to wash, because if you look at your budget, your contracted services has only gone down $74,000. But yet other items within repair and maintenance and all of those things have still continued, of equipment have still gone up. So the whole argument that these two people are saving us money, it's here and it's not there. So I don't know where those people are saving us money, but it's not under the contracted service line in your budget.
Again, it's in the contracted services line, it's in the watershed maintenance line. We can do a whole lot more with the people, not just contracted services that was not getting done before.
Okay. Councilor T-Bowman, yes.
I guess I kind of have, will you clarify for me? Because I got a little confused with your comment, Counselor. So the line item hasn't changed for contract, or went down not significantly for contract services, but what you're saying is with these two people, we're getting about $200,000 worth of work on them.
Correct.
So then, if we wouldn't have those two people, then we'd be contracting out for that $200,000?
Or not doing the work.
Or not doing the work, okay. And then the next question is, so what is the delay for hiring?
As my understanding, and again, I don't want to speak for the mayor.
Oh, it's for, okay.
Is the mayor has put a, hiring freeze on,
Okay.
not replace retirees. So.
Oh, wait, can we ask the mayor as a council what specifically is the delay for hiring, especially when our department head is saying that there's work that needs to get done?
What the current hiring policy is, or?
Yeah, why there's been a freeze in that particular department?
Councilor Bean.
That was before. I didn't have another question. I'm all set. That was just a cough, if that was anything.
Councilor Caddy.
Dennis, could you, it's probably difficult now, but could you provide us with a list of projects that these two positions have completed that you would have gone out to contract services? So we have just some type of an idea.
Sure.
Because I do believe, if we believe you, which I'm not saying that we don't, that you probably did complete more projects with these guys. So if you could just prove that in some way in writing, I think it'd put us a lot at ease. The second thing, a couple of years ago, it could have been longer, you were doing wind testing up at the reservoir. Whatever happened to that? Did the studies come back, and were the airflows proper for windmills?
They were marginal at best, and we haven't had the revenues or the grants available to move forward with that, to put what's called a Met Tower up and to prove out the wind speeds. But the initial factors were marginal. We would have had to put, again, a year-long study of a Met Tower up, and we haven't come up with funding to do that at this point.
Any alternatives like hydro?
We did, again, complete a hydro study at our Narrows Road pressure reducing station. Unfortunately, hydropower is treated economically differently than wind and solar power within state regulations and state laws. So what's called virtual net metering, where you can sell power produced by solar and by wind power at retail rate back to the utility. With a hydro facility, you can only sell it at wholesale, so they give you a nickel and you buy it back at 10 cents, so it doesn't make economic sense to do that, and that's what the study concluded.
But I would think that you could use all the electricity.
If we could use the electricity at the site that it's generated at, it would make sense. Unfortunately, the PRV station has very little electric usage. If we could run the same hydro generator at one of the regional plant or the Falula Road, the Ringe Road plant, I'm sorry, and wire the power directly into that facility where it's produced, then it would make sense. You're correct. But what's called virtual net metering, which was the big change in green power, the way the laws were written, where you could produce power in one site and then use it and get an offset for another site that you own, is not available for hydro generators. Worked with Representative Di Natale, actually appeared at the State House and spoke in favor of changing those laws, and that's been held in commission for about 2 years now.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. Moving on to wastewater, page 58. Good evening, Mr. Jordan. Thank you, Dennis. Wastewater FY14 budget from the mayor. Total expenses, $10,505,490. Projected for this current year, total expenses, $9,116,580. Requested, $10,505,490. Total surplus projected for the current year from the mayor, $385,479. Currently in FY13, $2,066,420. Good evening.
Good evening, President.
Yep. Go ahead. Do you have something that you'd like to?
Yeah, councilors, I just wanted to recap a little bit of some of the highlights of fiscal year 13 and some of the upcoming projects for fiscal 14. We have been very busy in the wastewater department in fiscal 13. Some of the major projects, we've completed Source Separation Project 2B, which was over in the Milk and South Street area. We've mostly completed Source Separation Project 3C, which was down the Albee and Canton Street area. We installed a new groundwater interceptor, which removed several 100,000 gallons of groundwater from the sanitary system over on Jeffrey Street. We replaced, with the help of the DPW streets crews, a broken sewer main that crossed the Nashua River, and we replaced that with a new small E1 pump station that was designed in-house. We've have completed the CEPT, the chemically enhanced primary treatment, down at the treatment plant, and we're bringing that online. We've completed the design of the Source Separation Project 4D, which is down the Bartell area. And we've also got a grant to begin looking at anaerobic digestion as a long-term solution for sludge processing. Currently, we landfill, and with the landfill expected to close in 2025, we're looking at more of a long-term solution. We've, in fiscal 13, with some of the operational changes that we made, and in conjunction with the source separation projects, we've had 7 months last year where we had 0 violations at the plant, which has never happened before. We are making great strides down at the plant, and we expect to continue doing that. Also in fiscal 2013, we did move forward with the award in the final step to design the final upgrades down at the treatment plant, which essentially will have rebuilt the entire plant front to back since 2009. As you all are well aware, the plant was in great need of upgrade and repair. There's been really no major improvements done on that since it was built, and it was really starting to fall apart, and I'm very happy to say that by the end of 2014, we would have completely rebuilt the plant, and it is shown in the operation. Going forward in fiscal 2014, we're going to begin construction of the 4D separation project. We will complete the design of the secondary upgrades down at the plant, and we also expect to do other smaller projects out in the collection system, all in an attempt to minimize the amount of CSO, which is a big part of the consent decree work. And I think we're making very good progress throughout. And one last big change in my fiscal 14 budget is just to more accurately represent where some of the monies are going is I've budgeted $1 million for a reserve for debt service. Over the next 2-3 years, we're going to see our debt service jump by almost $3 million to pay for the ongoing projects.
Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joe, last few years, we've seen an increase in the personal services component of the contract. How many positions have we added over the last couple of years?
A lot of those have been with the collections crew. I would venture to say between 6 and 9. I'd really have to go back and take a hard look at. But there were, in 2011, we added 6 people to the collections crew, just in the streets, and then a couple of supervisory positions.
We have here on page 60, you've got a GIS engineer. That was in fiscal year 12 was 42,000, going to 54 for the projected.
Council, that was, the 42 was only part of the year.
Partial year? Okay.
Yeah. And the GIS was also in response to the building the collection staff.
And then the next one below it was the storekeeper, which was at eliminated in 2012 and then comes back in 13 as, I'm assuming, a partial, and then comes back as a full?
Yes, in 2012, the gentleman who was in that position was out on workman's comp. He no longer works for us in that position. Those duties were being filled by one of the assistant mechanics who was doing double duty.
And then on page 62, you have EPA penalty, SEP project, projected 141, requested $100,000. Can you explain that?
Yes, the 141 was the EPA penalty that we paid as part of the consent decree for past violations, and the 100,000, the SEP project is a supplemental environmental project, which was in lieu of a penalty if the city agreed to do an environmental project that benefited the city. Instead of paying $100,000 to offset the federal budget of $20 trillion, they said we could do a $100,000 project that would benefit the city.
So the EPA penalty really wasn't 141, it was 241?
Correct. But 100,000 of that actually stayed in the city of Fitchburg.
By doing something, but it still cost us $100,000.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
I want to be clear about that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Bean.
Joe, a couple questions. One on the incinerator. That is not in operation today, is that correct?
That is correct.
And when I look at natural gas, your budget line item went way down on that. That's because the incinerator was actually fueled by natural gas.
Correct.
Okay. What do we, so, where it says ash disposal, I'm a little confused, because if we're not using, where does ash come from if you don't use an incinerator? Just help me out on that one.
Counselor, that's one thing I'll have to work with Mr. Saracen on to modify that description. That is ash/sludge disposal.
Okay.
And so with the agreement that we have, that we're in the process of terminating with Leominster, is because of the added disposal cost with Leominster. That's the reason that number is going up. When Leominster goes away, so will that number for the most part.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that would...
Right, yes, and so the 320 will be offset by what we get in commercial incineration charges, which is the sludge that we get from Leominster, and we're obligated to take that through October of 2014.
Okay. So in the past, we burnt our sludge and then disposed of the ash up at the landfill.
Correct.
And that was done through the incinerator. The incinerator is now completely, we're not permitted anymore for the permits?
Yes, that's true.
We lost our permit on the...
We gave up the air quality permit.
Okay, okay. So our only alternative now is to do sludge disposal, and that's the dewatering of the sludge and then landfilling it?
Landfill in it, and as I said earlier, we are looking at anaerobic digestion up at the West Plant. We did get a grant to do that, and that would be our long-term solution.
Okay. What happens to the waste after you do the anaerobic digestion, which creates some kind of gas that you can regenerate, I assume?
Yes, a byproduct is methane gas, and we could do a operated generator with that.
But you still have the sludge from that?
Yes, the sludge from that, based on the level of treatment that is provided through the anaerobic process, the residual byproduct is either a Class A or Class B solid.
Okay.
So it could be land applied, and that's part of what the grant is going to look at.
Right. And again, that's the technology going forward, is the anaerobic digestion.
Yes, it's an old technology, but there's a push by the state to reduce organic waste going to landfills by, I believe it's 30%, and this is one way to achieve that goal.
I'm not an expert, but just when I heard that the incinerator was being shut down, I know there was cost involved to keep it open. I was just concerned that, we're losing a permitted operation, but it's happened, and it's water over the dam at this point. My second question would be regarding the West Treatment Plant. You mentioned possibly doing a pilot for the anaerobic digesters up there. Are there any other plans for that West Plant? I know we've had discussions before. I'm concerned that it's basically a pump station, a $400,000 pump station that we're using as office space too, which to me is a lot of wasted money. What are the plans for? What are the plans for that plant?
Right now, Counselor, is I am looking into trying to move the offices down into temporary trailers down to the East Plant, in which case we could close off the office space, which would save us a little bit. It would save us our gas expense at the West Plant. If anaerobic digestion works, then the goal would be to reactivate that as an anaerobic facility, and essentially that would be a self-sufficient plant. We would staff it with a staff to operate the system, and part of that, and again, we haven't begun the study yet, so I can't give definitive answers, but one other feedstock into anaerobic digestion, in addition to Fitchburg sludge, would be food waste, say, from a grease trap, which has a very high, the proper mixes, you can really maximize the amount of gas output. And if we were to do that, then that would also generate additional revenues up at that facility to help offset any cost.
So the anaerobic digesters would just be used in those pools that are out there, am I correct? It wouldn't be used in the charcoal activated, that large section of the building?
And that's something we're going to look at. It's possible, if you're familiar with Deer Island in Boston, they have the big egg-shaped, those are anaerobic digesters, and it is possible that we could possibly convert the tanks inside the facility possible, no guarantees. And they're going to look at that versus would it be more cost-effective to run a new, or build a new building and house it in there. These are all things that the study is going to evaluate. And it's going to be done in 2 phases. The first phase will look at really the feasibility, and if it appears that it's feasible, phase 2 will get more into the details of the plan.
I just want to thank you and the commission for looking outside the box of that facility, because that's an eyesore, and as I met with you last year when I came on board, it's a $400,000 expenditure for an office space and a pumping station, which I think we can't afford. So to be able to look at other uses for that, I think is good, and maybe go beyond the anaerobic digesters and look at other options, putting an RFP out to see what other companies are out there that could have an interest in doing something there, but that's good. A couple other questions. One is, have we changed the process? I notice we're using sodium there's a change in your chemical prices here. You got one chemical now at only $20,000, the other, but
Yeah.
a different process that we're doing?
No, same process, but with the chemically enhanced primary treatment, the CEPT. A big part of it, I can just touch on the key chemicals. And the first is being sodium hydroxide. The big drop there was sodium hydroxide was previously used for pH adjustment. Excuse me. It was also used as a neutralizing chemical for the acid gases that came off the incinerator. Going forward, I'm going to use very little of that, and that's going to be to use in a chemical scrubber just to maintain proper pH levels, but the pH chemical that we're going to be using for the process is magnesium hydroxide, which, if you'll notice, it's $25,000 for this year, which is just for a couple months, and then $120,000 for next year. And that number is our best estimate based on engineering designs and estimates that we've got that has gone out to bid, so we know what we're going to use, and we've done the best we can to calculate the volume. However, we have nothing historical to base that on. The other chemical I'd like to direct your attention to is polymer. You'll see that polymer has also taken a sizable increase, and with the chemically enhanced primary treatment, we're also doing multi-point dosing of ferric chloride and polymer. And so instead of feeding just one area, we're going to be feeding 5 areas throughout the plant. And the purpose of that is to maximize the settleability of solids in the secondary treatment stage. And the benefit there is we can maximize flows through the plant and still meet permit. And so, a lot of the increases in chemicals are due to multi-point dosing with the new operation method.
2 more things. The incinerator, the stack and all that's just going to stay, none of that's coming down, or is that all coming down?
Can we just maybe keep this to a budget session and not an overall strategy?
I have a chance to talk with these department heads to get information. Is that budget sessions?
No.
I think part of this is finding out the costs and that, and finding out the, I don't know, what do you mean?
Do you have any time you'd like to go and check future strategies with Mr. Jordan on the...
Are you telling me I can't ask questions? Or just tell me what,
just keep going, but just try to keep it to what's in our budget today.
It's on here.
Okay, go ahead.
The incinerator, Counselor, right now is, I'm not 1,000% sure that I will never start that incinerator again.
Okay.
900% sure. The long-term plan would be to demo the incinerator and demo the air pollution control, the equipment inside the building. I would then be looking to maybe reutilize that space in some other fashion. However, I'm still looking at that at this time, and I'd rather not jump.
We're not being required to take it down, that's all I'm saying, because of the cost involved in that would be...
Right, and, my hope as Mr. Casassa related with the steam plant is there's a lot of residual value in those 2 areas, and, it may be cost-effective to remove it and reutilize that space, but that's something I'll look at.
And the last thing, vehicle replacement, is that What type of, 15,000? There's a,
Yeah, the vehicle replacement is, instead of getting a full-size vehicle as a yard truck, if you will, something just to go pick samples up, we're looking at, I guess it's a four-wheeler, like a
okay.
gator type of vehicle.
Okay. And, Mr. President, if my questions are not relevant to people, I mean, I'm just trying to get information. I mean, that's what this whole process is, to find out what cost or what we have to cost, what potential future costs may be in that. I mean, I'm not sure what you meant by cutting me off, but I'm just saying, I don't know when else to ask these questions.
Point taken. Councilor Reynolds.
There's an increase of $42,500 in city billing. Could you explain that? And this is on page 61 of 76, and it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth item up.
Yes, that went up last year, Counselor, and when we went to monthly billing, that's the wastewater portion to process the water and sewer bills. They're all processed through the water department. They get the read-ins, they...
Right, and has that increased activity increased income?
I would say yes, it has.
Increased to people that don't pay or whatever?
I think what we've seen is that, total right now outstanding is, I'm not sure. Dennis, we've looked at this, and we're total outstanding is right around $600,000. Is that correct, Dennis?
Yes.
By my calculations, we're collecting 94% of everything that's billed on an ongoing basis. We've seen that the outstanding has dropped significantly.
Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
How many new positions are not filled right now? How many new positions are in this budget? Are there any?
None.
None. Polymer is $250,000 budgeted. The average 6-year spend is $140,000.
Yes.
So if this were to be cut, will that hurt you?
Council, as I've said in the past, we've only did single-point dosing of polymer. We'll now be dosing polymer in 5 locations throughout the plant. Will it hurt us? It will definitely affect, and the plant will not be operated as designed. Yes, it could hurt us.
What about ferrous chloride?
Same thing. It used to be added only at the headworks, and I would welcome any and all counselors, if you want to come see the changes, please come down. I encourage you to come down. And so, sorry for my little sales pitch there, but it used to be added only at the headworks, and now we're adding at the headworks and at the outlet of each and every aeration basin. Additionally, when we go into high flow modes, we are increasing the dosage at the headworks of both polymer and ferric chloride.
So you can't absorb this anywhere else if it were cut, and you ended up having to use more than you normally use?
I'll say, Council, that we have a grand total of 45 days experience with this new system. We can, if the council wants to cut, can I say conclusively that it'll have no impact or an impact? I can't say that right now.
You don't have a definite on what that increase will be, though, right? You don't know what that could be?
No, because we have no historical. You can say, I want to cut it in half.
No.
I can't.
Any cuts that I was going to recommend would still leave you a tremendous amount more than what has been historically in those accounts.
Right, and historically, Counselor, we don't operate the plant like that any longer. It's a completely different operation down there going forward.
Okay,
Counselor, I'm just afraid we're going to go down the same road. Let's nickel and dime this, and we're going to be right back in the same boat that generated a $100 million consent decree.
So
Not be penny wise and pound foolish.
$100,000 cut out of $10.5 million will cause significant problems?
I won't say it will, I won't say it won't. It's a brand-new mode of operation.
I understand that.
I can't say. I'm going by how the plant was designed, and there were recommended dosages to meet our permit. Do you want me to say that it will?
I got you, Mr. Jordan. I'm just,
Okay.
you know, I get a little skeptical when I hear that a 1% cut will cause problems of a magnitude that has been identified earlier. I'm not asking for a 5, a 10, a 2, because I know we're building up retained earnings because of what we did when we set the business up. We set the business up, in my opinion, to fail from the start, and now we're trying to correct that mistake, but
I guess my
you
only
still-
comment, Counselor,
Yep.
if I may, is that on these chemicals, the polymer, the ferric, it's designed to take out solids. We have very, very low limits in the summer. If I have a 10 parts per million, I'm good. I have an 11, I just violated. Will it make it that difference? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I have no historical data to base this on. This is our best guess estimate. So I can't give you a intelligent answer at this point as to whether or not it will or will not have an impact of any kind.
I will reserve comment for a later date, but I will just say that I haven't made up my mind yet if I'm going to cut anything from here on a recommendation.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner, we're spending about $172,000 on billing, and we have other departments that are spending an exorbitant amount of money on sending bills to the residents. Have we come together, all the departments, and discuss about e-billing? I know that we offer in some sort of way for paying bills online. I'm sure we know the amount of people who sign up for those. Those people may also be interested in getting e-bills.
Counselor, I would respectfully have to speak with the treasurer to see if he has gone down that line. If I may, Dennis, I'm not sure if we have looked at that, e-billing.
Again, had several conversations with the treasurer and, expressed I think Joe and I's willingness to explore any and all opportunities to reduce that cost. And where the two enterprise funds are all for it. If we can make that happen through the treasurer's department, and through the city, complying with regulations, security, and good auditing practice, then we're all for it. We'll try to work with him to improve our efficiency on the billing end.
I think if you gentlemen look and pursue that, it's another step forward for the city.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Counselor.
Motion made. Second to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.